Welcome back to our channel. Tonight, we journey together into the deep shadows of one of America's most terrifying locations. A place where the echoes of suffering and despair still linger in every decaying corridor and on every peeling wall. Here, history is not merely recorded in ink on paper, but is etched by tears, silenced screams, and the restless souls who could never find peace. This is the story of the Pennhurst Asylum, a harrowing chronicle of abuse and the ghosts it left behind. A tale that continues to haunt the very ground it was built upon. In the early years of the 20th century, amidst the green fields and dense forests of Spring City, Pennsylvania, a massive architectural complex was erected, with its stately red brick and terracotta buildings. The Pennhurst State School and Hospital presented an image of solemn dignity. Opened in 1908, it was founded on what was then considered a progressive idea: to create a separate, isolated community for individuals with physical and mental disabilities. It was presented to the public not as a prison, but as a sanctuary, a place of specialized care and protection from a world that didn't understand them. Pennhurst was promised as a paradise, a safe harbor where society's unfortunate children could receive dedicated care, education, and shelter. The sprawling 1,400-acre campus was designed to be a self-sufficient world, complete with its own farms, power plant, and even a railway line. The vision was one of a humane and orderly institution, with heavy hearts but filled with hope. Families brought their loved ones to Pennhurst's gates, entrusting these fragile souls to the care of supposed experts. They left with the assurance that their children would finally be safe, cared for, and given a chance at a meaningful life. However, that promise, like the gilded paint on its brick walls, soon began to fade, revealing a rotten and horrifying truth within. The dream of a utopian community quickly descended into a nightmare. Almost immediately after opening, the facility became severely overcrowded. Designed to house a few hundred, its population swelled into the thousands. State funding dwindled, leading to chronic understaffing and a desperate shortage of resources. The few doctors and nurses on staff were overworked, exhausted, and eventually their compassion gave way to indifference, and then to outright cruelty in the face of an impossible situation. Pennhurst ceased to be a place of healing and devolved into a human warehouse. Patients of all ages and with a wide range of disabilities were crammed into filthy, squalid wards. The overwhelming stench of human waste and decay permeated the air, a constant reminder of the neglect. The institution became a breeding ground for disease, where suffering was not the exception, but the daily reality for its thousands of residents. The hope that once filled these halls was replaced by an atmosphere of profound and inescapable despair, trapping everyone inside its suffocating grip. and turning the facility into a living hell. The physical conditions were appalling, but the deepest rot was the systematic dehumanization and abuse inflicted upon the patients. They were stripped of their dignity, treated as less than human. Children were left unattended for days, deprived of education, affection, or even the most basic human interaction. They wandered the cold halls with empty, vacant eyes, many losing the ability to speak or connect with the world around them. Their minds and spirits were broken long before their bodies gave out, left to fade away in a place that was supposed to be their sanctuary, but became their prison. Abuse was a daily, methodical occurrence. Patients who were deemed disobedient were subjected to brutal beatings, tied to their beds for days on end, or starved as a form of punishment. Some staff members devised cruel entertainments, forcing patients to fight one another for their amusement. In a particularly horrific practice, patients who were known to bite had their teeth pulled out without anesthetic as a punitive measure. The cruelty was not random. It was woven into the very fabric of the institution's daily operations, a dark and accepted part of life within Pennhurst's walls, hidden from the outside world. A glimmer of light pierced the darkness in 1968 when reporter Bill Baldini aired a shocking 5-part television exposé titled "Suffer the Little Children." For the first time, the public witnessed the horrors inside Pennhurst. Images of children locked in metal cages, adult patients writhing on filthy floors, and the desperate, pleading eyes of those trapped within. The documentary ignited public outrage, but meaningful change was agonizingly slow to come. The institution remained open, and the suffering continued for nearly 2 more decades, a testament to the system's profound failure to protect its most vulnerable. The final chapter for Pennhurst began with a landmark lawsuit filed in 1974. The case, Halderman v. Pennhurst State School and Hospital, was initiated by the family of a patient named Terry Lee Halderman, who returned home for a visit covered in unexplained bruises. The class action suit argued that the horrific conditions and systematic abuse at the facility violated the constitutional rights of its residents. This legal battle would drag on for years, slowly chipping away at the fortress of neglect and cruelty that Pennhurst had become, aiming to bring justice to thousands of silent victims. After years of litigation, a federal judge ruled that the conditions at Pennhurst were unsanitary, inhumane, and dangerous, violating the fundamental human rights of its patients. The court mandated that the institution be closed, and its residents moved to smaller, community-based facilities. However, it would take another decade for the final closure to be enforced. On December 9, 1987, the last patient was moved out, and the gates of Pennhurst were locked for good. After nearly 80 years of operation, its legacy of pain and suffering was sealed within its empty, silent buildings. over its grim history. More than 10,000 individuals passed through Pennhurst's doors. Thousands died there, often alone and in agony, their deaths recorded as mere statistics. As the last residents left, the sprawling campus was abandoned. Left to crumble and decay, nature began its slow process of reclaiming the land. As vines crept through broken windows and weeds grew tall in the courtyards, Pennhurst became a ghost town, a silent monument to a shameful past. But the silence was only a facade, for the immense energy of decades of trauma could not simply vanish. Soon after its closure, chilling stories began to circulate among the locals. People living near the abandoned asylum reported hearing blood-curdling screams echoing from the empty buildings in the dead of night. They saw strange lights and shadowy figures moving behind the dark, shattered windows of the wards, knowing full well that the facility was supposed to be completely deserted. Pennhurst was no longer just an abandoned hospital. It was becoming a legend, a place whispered about with fear, a place where the dead were said to still roam its decaying and haunted halls. These eerie tales soon attracted the attention of paranormal investigators and urban explorers. Armed with cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field detectors, they ventured past the no trespassing signs to uncover the secrets held within Pennhurst's walls. What they found and documented was more terrifying than any local legend. The evidence they gathered suggested that while the living had left, the spirits of those who suffered and died there remained, trapped in an endless cycle of torment and anger, their presence palpable in the oppressive, heavy air of the asylum. One of the most active and terrifying locations on the campus is the Mayflower Building, which once housed the most severely disabled patients. Investigators here consistently report doors slamming shut with violent force in empty hallways, the sound of phantom footsteps running frantically on the floors above them, and disembodied whispers that seem to come from all directions at once. Many have reported an overwhelming feeling of being watched by unseen eyes, a chilling sensation that sends a cold dread through even the most seasoned paranormal researchers, forcing them to question their safety. Digital voice recorders have captured countless electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs, within these haunted walls. The recordings contain ghostly voices speaking short, desperate phrases like "get out," "help me," and "go away." Other recordings have captured agonizing moans, sorrowful crying, and most disturbingly, the faint sounds of children laughing or singing in rooms that have been empty for decades. These disembodied voices are believed to be the residual echoes of the tormented souls who are permanently bound to the location of their greatest suffering, unable to move on. Among the many spirits said to haunt Pennhurst, one of the most frequently cited is that of a young girl. She appears in various buildings across the campus, often seen wandering alone with a look of confusion and deep sadness on her face. Witnesses describe her as wearing a simple white dress, and she never speaks. Instead, she will stare at visitors with sorrowful, hollow eyes before slowly fading away into the darkness. It is widely believed that she is the spirit of one of the many children who died from neglect or abuse within the asylum. Not all the spirits at Pennhurst are sad or lost. Some are filled with an intense and terrifying rage. In buildings known for the worst abuse, such as Devon Hall and the Quaker Building, visitors and investigators have reported being physically assaulted by an unseen force. They describe being pushed, shoved, scratched, and even having their hair pulled by an invisible entity. This aggressive activity is thought to be the work of spirits of patients who endured unimaginable torture. Their anger so profound that it continues to lash out at the living even after death. The paranormal activity also manifests as objects moving on their own. Heavy doors swing open and closed. Old, rusted wheelchairs roll down empty corridors, as if pushed by an invisible patient. And small rocks or debris have been thrown at people from dark corners. This poltergeist-like activity serves as a terrifying reminder of the violent energy that remains imprinted on the environment. The rage of the past seems to have a physical power, a lingering fury that can still interact with our world in frightening and unpredictable ways, making any visit a potentially dangerous experience. A particularly chilling account comes from a former staff member of the Halloween attraction that now operates on the grounds. While alone in a dimly lit section filled with old medical equipment, she decided to rest for a moment on an empty hospital bed. Suddenly, the bed began to shake violently beneath her. Terrified, she leaped away and watched in horror as the empty bed continued to shudder and bounce on its own for several seconds before coming to an abrupt stop. She was certain she was the only living person in the area, a terrifying confirmation of an unseen presence. Beneath the campus lies a vast network of dark, suffocating tunnels used to transport patients and supplies between buildings, especially during harsh winters. These tunnels are widely considered to be one of the most haunted areas of Pennhurst. Investigators who venture into them report an immediate sense of overwhelming dread and claustrophobia, as if the walls themselves are closing in. The air is thick and heavy, and many have been forced to retreat after being overcome by a feeling of pure panic, as if the darkness itself is alive and hostile. Deep within these oppressive tunnels, investigators have recorded a host of disturbing sounds. The clanking of unseen chains being dragged across the concrete floor, the distinct sound of multiple sets of footsteps rushing towards them in the pitch black, and terrifying guttural growls that seem to emanate from the very shadows themselves have all been documented Some have even seen fleeting, dark shapes darting across the far ends of the tunnels, humanoid figures that vanish the moment a flashlight beam hits them, leaving only a lingering sense of profound malevolence behind. Today, parts of the Pennhurst campus have been repurposed into a controversial haunted attraction, a museum, and a venue for historical and paranormal tour. This transformation has sparked a heated debate. Critics argue that turning a place of such profound human tragedy into a source of entertainment is disrespectful to the thousands of victims who suffered and died there. They believe it trivializes a dark chapter in history and exploits the pain of those who had no voice, turning their real-life horror story into a seasonal thrill for paying customers. On the other hand, proponents argue that these new uses keep the story of Pennhurst alive, ensuring that its dark history is not forgotten. They believe that by drawing people to the site, they are educating a new generation about the mistreatment of individuals with disabilities and the importance of human rights. For them, the haunted attraction and tour serve as a powerful, visceral reminder of the consequences of neglect and cruelty, ensuring that the lessons learned from Pennhurst's past are never erased from the public consciousness, regardless of one's stance on its current use. No one can deny the palpable, heavy energy that saturates the grounds of Pennhurst. It is more than just a collection of decaying buildings. It stands as a massive, sprawling tombstone, a physical testament to the horrors that can unfold when society chooses to lock away and forget its most vulnerable members. The pain, fear, and despair of its former residents have soaked into the very bricks and mortar, leaving an indelible stain that time cannot wash away. The ghosts of Pennhurst, whether they are literal spirits of the dead or simply the psychic imprints of extreme trauma, represent the echoes of thousands of destroyed lives. Every unexplained noise in a dark hallway, every shadow seen from the corner of an eye, and every sudden, inexplicable chill in the air serves as a haunting reminder of the suffering that took place behind these walls. They are the eternal witnesses to an era of cruelty. Their presence, a silent scream that continues to reverberate through the decades, demanding to be heard. The story of Pennhurst is a tragic and vital lesson. It is a cautionary tale about the catastrophic failure of a system designed to protect, the dangers of isolating those who are different, and the profound darkness that can arise from a lack of compassion and oversight. It reminds us that when we dehumanize others, we open the door to unspeakable atrocities, creating our own monsters and the ghosts that will inevitably follow. Its legacy is a stark warning that must never be ignored. The night grows late. As you prepare to turn off the lights, take a moment to remember the lost souls of Pennhurst. Listen carefully to the silence of your own room. Perhaps, if you listen closely enough, you might just hear their whispers on the wind, a desperate plea from the past, a timeless request to never, ever be forgotten. Their story is now a part of you, a shadow that lingers long after the tale has ended. Thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey into the heart of Pennhurst. We hope the stories shared tonight serve not only as a source of chills, but also as a solemn remembrance of the lives that were shattered within its walls. The history of such a place is important, a dark mirror reflecting the progress we have made and the vigilance we must maintain to ensure such horrors are never repeated. May the memory of its victims finally find a measure of the peace they were denied in life. The spirits of Pennhurst are a powerful testament to the idea that some places are forever scarred by the events that transpired there. The emotional energy born from decades of intense suffering has created a permanent wound on the landscape, one that continues to bleed into our present reality. For paranormal investigators and sensitive individuals, the asylum is not just a collection of buildings. It is an open gateway, a place where the veil between our world and the next is terrifyingly thin and easily crossed. The Mayflower building in particular remains a focal point of this intense energy. It was a place of last resort, where individuals with the most profound needs were often left with the least amount of care. The spirits here are said to be among the most active, their residual energy replaying the daily horrors they endured. The sounds of metal beds creaking, faint crying, and sudden drops in temperature are common experiences, as if the building itself is perpetually reliving its own tragic and painful past for all who dare to enter. Many of the child spirits reported at Pennhurst are not malicious, but rather they seem lost and are often drawn to the presence of female visitors, perhaps seeking the maternal comfort they never received in life. Investigators have reported feeling gentle tugs on their clothing, hearing soft giggles in response to questions, and capturing EVPs of children asking for their mothers. These heartbreaking encounters are a poignant reminder that behind the terrifying legends were real children, innocent victims who deserved love and care, but found only neglect and misery. The legacy of Pennhurst extends far beyond its haunted reputation. The legal battles surrounding its closure were instrumental in reforming disability rights in the United States. The case established the constitutional right to treatment in the least restrictive environment possible, paving the way for the deinstitutionalization movement. In this way, the suffering of Pennhurst's residents, while horrific, ultimately contributed to a profound and positive change in how society cares for its disabled citizens, ensuring their voices, silenced for so long, finally led to a revolution of rights. As we conclude our story, remember that Pennhurst is more than a ghost story. It is a human story. It is a narrative of systemic failure and individual cruelty, but also one of survival, advocacy, and eventual justice. The echoes within its walls are not just those of the dead, but also of the living who fought to expose the truth and bring an end to the suffering. The true horror of Pennhurst is not just in its ghosts, but in the chilling reality that it was real. We wish you a safe and peaceful night.